Salutations, Shades, and welcome back to your one-stop shop for all things strange and unusual, talking with shadows, the conversations everyone has, but no one wants to admit to. Here today, with only your host, Marcus Dee. Vic's not here today, guys. This is going to be a tribute episode, actually, on September 17th, 2021. A good friend of me and Vic's, Robb Walter, a.k.a. Bulldog Milenko, passed away from COVID. And Bulldog was an incredible guy. He invited me onto his podcast, the Bulldog Unchained Podcast, numerous times to talk about the paranormal. He was a big inspiration, to me, and encouraged me to really start a podcast with Vic. A lot of people had been for a while, and after he started bringing me onto his podcast, it really got, me motivated, and me and Vic finally decided to actually sit down and actually launch our podcast. And Bulldog actually was one of the people that I was sending some of the early ideas of our logo to get feedback from, even before I sent it over to Vic. I mean, that's how instrumental that Bulldog was in, for the launch of our podcast. And, when Vic went to take care of his mom back in 2019, I needed to record a patron episode. I had to sit down and I had to think about who I could bring onto the podcast that could really, try to step up and, even try to hold a candle to what Vic brings to the table. And the only person that could even barely come close was Bulldog. Bulldog stepped up, he rose to the challenge, and came into the studio back in 2019 and recorded an episode with me where we talked about Ancient Astronaut Theory. The theory that aliens were instrumental in guiding early man. And, I enjoyed doing the episode with him, and me and Vic talked about it, and after Bulldog passed away, we thought it would be a good idea to release the episode to everybody, so that everybody could enjoy the podcast that me and Bulldog did. So, rest in peace, Bulldog. He really was the true king of villains. So, I hope you guys enjoy. Hey guys, welcome back to One Candle Society. Here with your host, Marcus Dee. And joining me in the studio today, guys, I have a guest host with me. He is the host of the Bulldog Unchained Podcast. He is the king of villains himself. Please welcome to the studio, Bulldog Milenko.
Thank you, brother.
Absolutely. And today, guys, Vic is still out, so I brought Bulldog in here in order to be able to help me with a particular theory that we both really enjoy, and I think you guys are going to enjoy too. Today, we're going to be talking about Ancient Astronaut Theory. And summing it up real quick, Ancient Astronaut Theory is the theory that extraterrestrial life in some way, shape, or form was involved in humanity's either creation or its advancement throughout the years. People have been arguing about this for years with different theories on how this may or may not actually go down. Me and Bulldog have talked about this extensively on his podcast and in private, so he was the guy I wanted to bring.
I appreciate it, man. Mm-hmm. I've been looking forward to doing this.
Absolutely. And today, guys, we're drinking Angry Orchard. I am drinking the pear, actually.
I have rosé.
Awesome.
It's not bad.
Yeah, no, Angry Orchard's pretty good. With a much more behind us. Also, guys, if you ever have an alcohol you guys want us to try out, please put it in the comments below because we love suggestions, as you know here. So, not just topics, but also alcohol as well. So, Bulldog, do you believe in the Ancient Astronaut Theory?
Believe is a hard word. And when I say a hard word, I don't mean like psychologically hard. I mean it's just a hard, definitive word. I don't believe in a lot of things. However, I'm
dancing around the answer.
A student of. I study it. I've studied it in depth. I think that it has merit. But just like if we're going from an ancient astronaut theoretical premise or an archaeological premise, things get proven and disproven every day. Science gets rewritten every year. We find all kinds of we find out new things about ourselves that change and blow up the dynamic of who and what we thought we were. So I think that there's a lot of merit to be had in ancient astronaut theory.
Yeah, like one of the we have a hard time understanding even ourselves and our own history about for where we come from. One of the biggest easiest examples that I can ever give people, think of the Sphinx. The Sphinx in ancient Egypt, people have been arguing since the beginning, since they found it, of who created the Sphinx. What is the Sphinx representing? Is it a man's face? Is it a woman's face? What king built it?
Actually, it was originally either a dog or a lion.
Mm-hmm.
And Graham Hancock, who we were discussing before we started recording, Graham Hancock is he's a guy who wrote Fingerprints of the Gods, Magicians of the Gods, and has a new book called America Before. He is he's the one who coined the phrase, we're a species with amnesia. But he and Dr. Robert Schoch, and now they have like 60 other high-level archaeological people behind them in the theory of, well, okay, we know that the pyramids date back to about 4,500 BC, but they're thinking that the Sphinx actually dates back to between 8 and 10,000 BC.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason why is because the Sphinx shows erosion that no other structure on the Giza Plateau displays, and that would have to date back to when the Nile Valley was a lush, almost tropic environment. And a lot of people are unaware that it was a tropic environment.
Yeah, before it became the desert that it is today, and
Yes.
like the Sphinx was actually changed halfway, like I think partially like halfway through, like you said, from like what they thought it was dedicated to the Egyptian god Anubis, and then they shifted it to being the body of a lion to like predate, I think, like the astrological sign of Leo that was like over the sun at the time.
And the reason is because the way that it's facing, I can't remember exactly but it's facing the land of the dead.
Yeah. So that's why people thought that it was originally dedicated to the god Anubis, and whatnot too.
But yeah, the ancient astronaut theory itself is fascinating, and for those that don't know, the pioneer of ancient astronaut theory's name is Eric von Daniken, who wrote Chariots of the Gods back in the 1960s.
Which is a good book, which you guys should check out.
Yeah, it's an amazing read. That book is the whole reason that Georgios Tsoukalos, you may not know the name, but when I say the dude with the crazy hair and aliens, that guy, the meme. Yeah. That's why Giorgio exists, and David Childress and countless other ancient astronaut theorists.
Got the jobs that we really wanted.
Man, I stumbled across ancient astronaut theory way too late in my life. Like, when it was introduced to me was actually about 2 years before Ancient Aliens aired on TV, like before it first started, and I was like, oh my god, this makes way more sense than any religion I've ever studied. Like, it would actually explain a lot of religions in a better sense. Like, in Hinduism, the Bhagavad Gita descended from the sky. And keep in mind, these people 6,000 years ago or 4,000 years ago, wrote this using words that they had to describe things at the time.
Yes, like the gods are arriving in these massive ships, and they had words for like that.
The Bhagavad Gita descended from the sky in a metallic fire-breathing dragon. Its belly opened, and a man walked out. That's a spaceship! That's a spaceship!
Well, like, they got that, like, in the Bible, too, which was written,
the wheel.
400 AD. Yeah,
the wheel in the sky.
Yeah, that I think takes Ezekiel. I think
Yes.
that's what it is, isn't it?
Yeah, Ezekiel's wheel. Yeah.
He comes upon a chair of metal with the sound of, like, thunder and things like that. Just these words that, like, people, back in the day probably just would not be using. Now, my question is that hyperbole? Like, are they just doing that to make the story sound more mythological? Like,
well,
these could be things outside of the normal human scope, so these are why this is the divine, because we cannot do these things.
It could be, but how then, if we're going to discuss that it's hyperbole, we have to include that hundreds of civilizations from around the world that, as far as we know, never could have met each other, never could have interacted, couldn't, even if they had wandered and met each other. First of all, you have different people on different continents that, so far as we know, the Polynesians were the first seafarers. And this goes back to like 3,600 years ago. And that's what explains the Olmec carving statues in South America, and the carvings have like African and Polynesian features, the wide noses, the wider set eyes, the stronger jaws. South American people don't look like that. So why would these South American people make carvings of themselves that aren't correct representations, but they're carving representations of people from a continent away? But here's the point that I was making, though. You've got hundreds of civilizations that have stories about encountering beings from the stars, from the sky. And if it's just hyperbole, well, that's a whole lot of hyperbole. How did these people all come up with the same kinds of stories and stories of these beings, whoever they may be, extraterrestrials, time travelers? We don't know. How can we know? But so they intervened, and they helped guide people and helped establish actual civilization and advance.
So I have two ideas on this. I'm not saying this is particularly what I believe. I'm just saying speculation. I'm just doing this for the sake of argument. So I have two ideas behind this about why all these different people are coming up with these similar ideas. Because what myth does is it's giving answers to things that we have a hard time understanding. Even though all these other cultures talk about being someone from the sky, also all of these different cultures are all talking about myths of people coming back from the dead. At the various times, these are people that are just saying, what happens after life? Well, okay, there's various ghosts stories across multiple different cultures. That doesn't by itself mean that ghosts exist just because all these different cultures are saying that. All these different cultures talking about the gods coming down and descending from the sky could just be a way of them. That's where they would come from. They would come from the sky because we can't get up from there. And this is this myth, this glorious astrological, like, awe-inspiring place. That's where they'd have to live. And also the second thing too, I think that it comes to it too, is I think that comes from how leadership works too. And a lot of these different stories about people where aliens have come down and they've intermingled with society. A lot of the times what they're doing is they're interacting with great leaders, great kings at the times. And I think that gives justification to a lot of leaders as of why they're in charge, about why things are the way that they are. That's just my thought of if I was a leader and I was going to manipulate people, that's how I would do it.
Okay. Now, here's where this starts to collapse a bit, though.
I feel it coming.
I wish I could think of their name off the top of my head, but there is a sect of people in South America that their temples. Okay, the Aztec pyramids and the Egyptian pyramids. Do you know that they are perfectly aligned?
I didn't know that.
They align with Orion's belt. These people believed the same thing, that when you die, that's why there's the opening at the top, and it is directly, like, these openings are pointed at Orion's belt. And you've got pyramids in Africa that are aligned with pyramids in South America. That's crazy. And we're talking not a degree off. That's what? How? And then, on top of that, though, there's this other sect of people from South America. Their temples are built pointing at something else. And when they were questioned what it's pointing at, they named it, and they said, that's where we come from. It's pointing way out into deep space, and we were not able to observe the place that they were talking about until the 1970s or 80s. And then we discovered it, and sure enough, there's this whole planetary system up here that they are pointing directly at that is not observable from our night sky. We can't see it from our planet. You can't point at it like you can, like the North Star or the star, you have the other stars of like the Big Dipper or Orion's Belt. No, this is not observable from our planet with the naked eye. But they knew it was there. All of their temples are pointed directly at it, and then it's discovered thousands of years later
that there's something that's there.
And they said, this is where we come from. Well, how did they make that up? How did they make up something that they couldn't see it being there, and they built monuments pointed directly at it? That's
a really good one. You get some of these really hard things to answer, like that specifically.
Also, think about this. Do you realize that a lot of these sites in South America have only been discovered and uncovered because of deforestation of the rainforest? And on top of that, it's like 5.5 million square miles that we still can't. And some of these things are now being discovered using LiDAR, which is light imaging.
Oh, yeah, where we're finding some of this stuff.
Yeah.
Well, keep in mind, the Sphinx itself wasn't even found until...
they didn't know that there was a sub-level of the Sphinx until the 70s?
Yeah. About
80s?
this stuff, we found weird stuff like this all the time. I mean, it goes back to the idea of we're a culture of amnesia where we don't know. But
China won't even let anybody investigate their pyramids.
Yeah.
No one's allowed to. We know that they're there. We have satellite imaging of them. We have LiDAR imaging of them. We know where they're at. The Chinese government will not even allow any of their people to go investigate these pyramids. Why? What's there? What?
I mean, we're going to experience it there. My first thought, personally, is because, like, a lot of the times whenever you've like, ancient archaeology was not the most professional thing that was done. I mean, again, going back to the Sphinx, I mean, how much we damaged the Sphinx when we were trying to restore it and investigating how much damage that we actually caused to the Sphinx.
But at the same time...
what are you going to find there?
Exactly. That question coincides with, wouldn't you love to know what's in the bowels of the Vatican? What kind of information do they actually have in those archives? Do they know all of these things? And the reason that they've hidden them away and protected them so ferociously is because they know that it will undo all of their money, land, power grabbing scheme.
I would love to know what's down there, mostly just because
you lose all of the power once the information's out.
One of the things that this idea that we just keep more data now than what we did back in the day is not necessarily true, because you have a lot of cultures, they were very, very meticulous, like the Romans, and Egyptians, very, very meticulous about just keeping records of things.
And look what happened to the Library of Alexandria.
Burned to the ground.
Bye. How much of our history was lost in that?
Well, it's assumed it was lost. For where it's at.
Exactly.
For where it's at.
The majority of it was probably taken to the Vatican.
Because we have records, and again, we keep going back to the Sphinx, it's a really good thing to talk about within Ancient Astronaut Theory. We have records that talk about like how much the Egyptians paid some of their workers back in the day. So this is how meticulous some cultures actually are. So I think I was going through some of this. We were going back to like how you were talking about like how do we know all these temples and things are pointing to this particular thing in the night sky that we can't particularly observe. But I think this goes back to this idea when one of the arguments against ancient astronaut theory, and I believe, and I understand it to an extent, and I get it, is this idea that there's no way that ancient cultures could have done some of the things that they had done without outside influence.
This is where Graham Hancock comes in. So, getting away from the ancient astronaut side of it and going into the species with amnesia side of it, we as anatomical human beings as we are now have existed for 200,000 years.
Woo!
But about every 10,000 years, a huge cataclysm happens across this planet that wipes the majority of us out, and we get to start all over. So imagine if something hit today that knocked, first of all, it kills 95% of the population, so we're down to 500 million or less around the world. Also, a large part of the world isn't going to be habitable again for a really long time. And then you've got all of the satellites, anything electronic like this that an EMP is going to wipe out, it's done. Now think about, we have moved the majority of our lives away from ink and paper. And a lot of the ink and paper is going to be destroyed in a cataclysmic event anyway. But also, all of this, all these things stored on a flash drive or on hard drives or any kind of actual media.
It's gone.
It's gone. It's gone forever. You're not going to restore it. First of all, it's going to be hundreds or thousands of years before these people are able to recreate electricity.
And somebody has to start One Candle Society all over again.
That's what they're going to be living is the One Candle Society. They're going to be like, Jesus, we don't even know how to start a fire anymore. Like, think about it.
I know. It'd be like Walking Dead.
Can you start a fire without matches or...
I can't, but Vic can, and that's why I'd be coming over to his house. Like,
if you think about it, okay, I know how to hunt. I grew up hunting. If everything goes gone, hunter-gatherers are the only people that are going to survive on this planet. That's it. If you don't know what you can and can't eat in the wilderness, you're dead. Not only that, there's a lot of bold people that don't understand the dogs that you love. The dogs that you love. I'm going to tell you what, you people that have 3 or 4 dogs in your house, let those sons of bitches go for about a week and a half without eating. And I bet you're going to find out real quick how little they love you.
Again, I don't know I'm doing those things. Vic does. And now you know exactly about why we're friends. You ever seen the show Doomsday Preppers? Yeah, my prep was making friends with Vic. That was my plan from the beginning. Don't tell him.
It's an interesting concept of just how fragile we are. And we really are. And here and part of that, like what Graham Hancock says with we're a species that has amnesia, he was like, he doesn't necessarily believe in there needs to be extraterrestrial or outside influence. It's that these people have achieved the level, like us, we in the past, through tens of thousands of years, have multiple times achieved high levels of technological advancement, but we can't save ourselves. And then we get wiped out, and we get to start over.
Because, I mean, the ancient civilizations, they had things like advanced calculus and advanced mathematics in these things to be able to figure out how to do some of these things, and like to chart the stars and to build some of these monuments that they had.
There's a cave in Siberia, Dennis. They named the people that they discovered. Like, okay, so you do understand that Neanderthal man and Homo sapien as we are, like modern anatomical human, we are the same species. You get that, right?
Yeah.
We interbred. That's like, there's like 3 to 5% of the population that still displays Neanderthal DNA. There's also the Dennis Overmans, something like that. They were named after, I guess, this guy that discovered. There was a whole other type. They also interbred. But in this cave, they found these bracelets. Mm-hmm. Like, for those of you listening, if you want to hear more about, like, Graham Hancock was just on Joe Rogan, and it is, like, for his second time, it's outstanding. And he talks about all this, but they found these bracelets. Okay? These bracelets date back to between 60 and 70,000 years ago.
Weren't they metal?
Yes.
Yeah, they were metal.
But here's the crazy thing is, so they have the semblance of a technology that should not have existed in that time frame. Pinpoint precision drilling, like a drill press, because they have holes precisely drilled in them to where a charm pendant would have hung off of it. 60,000 years ago.
And there's examples across this all across the world.
Right, and that's what I'm saying. We find things every year that are just huge stacks of just explosive material that just change everything we know or knew about ourselves or what we thought.
We're still arguing about it. Baghdad battery. We were talking about that again before we started recording. That talk about ancient Egyptian theory about having electricity and how that worked.
Well, and they also suspect that they had hydroelectric power.
I'm just, and again, this is just theories about how, again, and people wonder about how they were able to erect such massive things like the Great Pyramids and things like that. Again, because we're still trying to figure out some of the technology.
Well, because we, with all of our great modern technology, we cannot recreate anything like the pyramids. We can't do it. We have huge land-moving machines. But those stones on that pyramid, some of them weigh, 300 tons? We can't move 300 tons. And then what I was telling you about before we started recording, there's the King's Chamber of the Great Pyramid. Well, above the King's Chamber, there are 5 other chambers that go up to 380 feet in elevation. All 5 of these chambers are lined on the roof and the floor with granite beams that each weigh 70 tons at 380 feet high. Now, for those of you that don't understand physics, this is another thing that Graham Hancock discussed, but this is something that I've talked to people about for years, because they're like, well, they just had, they had ramps. And I'm like,
ramps to get up there.
I'm like, first of all, you can't move things above a 300-ton stone. Well, the 70-ton granite beams could not be transported up anything greater than 10 degrees. And then, what are you using to move it? Logs. Get out of here with that. Logs. Log rollers.
No, they would crush it.
I don't care how many logs you got. It's the first time, even if you had enough people to move the thing, the first time it rolls 3 feet, now that's where that granite beam lives forever.
It's just not going anywhere.
Hey, look at this huge granite beam in the middle of the... also, every single one of those beams came from like 150 miles south. 150 miles south.
And it's a solid piece, too. Some of them are like solid pieces.
They are. No, these are 70-ton beams. Piece. They're not pieced together beams. They're all solid granite. Now,
I'm just saying, I can't say average. I'm just saying, I'm Mr. Egyptian supervisor, and I got Mr. Egyptian King Pharaoh saying, I got to build some sort of giant pyramid in there, and I got to make it work. Now, I'm a math whiz, and I don't know how this crap works. And I got to get a 300-ton beam up some sort of an incline to get up there, or else I'm gonna get killed. Survival's a motivating factor. I'm just saying we may
That's when you disappear into the desert and hope for the best,
or you pray for aliens.
I'm telling you right now,
yes,
they had of course they had worker, and a lot of people are like, well, they had slaves, and I'm like, No, these were not slaves that worked on the pyramids. Like, these were people that were paid.
You got records of people that are being paid at the time, yeah.
But not only that, like, it's...
So here, I'm gonna tell you what this is a good point to bring it up. This is gonna be my biggest problem with Ancient Astronaut Theory. And I'm not excusing the idea that extraterrestrials exist. We've talked about extensive on the channel podcasts before that they could exist. So if aliens actually came to Earth, why?
Okay.
Why would you be manipulated? Because if you think in the only context we can think about really about why they would be doing it is something that we would do. And if you think about the stuff that we do whenever we're either influencing cultures or if we're influencing even on a genetic level for stuff, it's really not. Why are we influencing a civilization? When an advanced species meets advanced civilization meets another lesser advanced civilization, that often ends with their assimilation, extinction, or enslavement.
You're assuming that they came here and met us.
Oh, that's a good one too. But I'll skip one too. But
You're not throwing in the possibility of we're a genetics experiment.
No,
This is a lab. This is a huge laboratory.
Yep.
That was cultivated and groomed and terraformed
That was next.
over billions of years to make way for a laboratory, a perfect testing site, and
for what? That's the thing that I've heard of, because you think about why we do this, about why we manipulate genetics. The reasons often are for medicine, warfare. I mean, medicine was a big overall umbrella. Food. That's kind of a scary one. About why we manipulate these genetics. Often, they're not very good for the stuff that we're manipulating.
You're thinking about human. Why we do it. We're not even a type 1 civilization yet. You understand that,
No,
right?
yeah, I get that.
On the Kardashev scale, we can't even harness our natural resources. We cannot harness the power of our sun, which is our nearest star, to provide all of the energy that we need for our planet. We can't do it. But
I get that, because that's the only way we can think about it.
Well, so... No, it's not. You got to get outside the box.
Right,
I'm gonna give you that thought.
Okay.
So here's the thing. Our planet is only 4 billion years old. We have only existed so far as we know now. This could change also, but right now we can date modern anatomical human beings to 200,000 years ago. Okay, on a 4 billion year old planet. We know that dinosaurs were here 65 million years ago. They had their chance. Now the lizards are gone, we have chickens. That's what remains. Seriously, that's what remains of the dinosaurs. We have chickens, got a few...
And 250,000 years later, we also have KFC.
Right, exactly.
That's what happened to the dinosaurs.
So the center of the universe,
yeah,
we can place at about 13.8 billion years old. So you got 14 billion years, 4 billion. Well... let's look at the universe like a huge ball. 14 billion years old from the center. Here we are at 4 billion. Our planet. We've only existed for 200,000 years, not even the blink of an eye of our own planet, let alone the universe. What's here? Here we are way out in no man's land. We're on the outskirts, okay? And there's all of this. What's
and I'll even respond to that. Like, what's out there? When we've calculated the energy that it would take. No, hang on. I'm not. To get there would be ridiculous.
For what we can produce.
True, for what we can produce. So
how do you know that there is not a planet or a civilization that exists in a completely, for us, physics-defying way of life?
Oh, section of space.
They have... No. What if they have a complete planetary, after billions of years of their species existing, not just their planet, say that they're... Okay, 14 billion years in the center. Say that their planet appeared 12 billion years ago. Say that they've existed for 8 billion years now. They've been around 4 billion years longer than our planet has existed here. What if they have multiple planets in a cluster, that they have a complete hive mind mentality? They are able to communicate planets away from each other and harness their own energy, let alone they can harness the energy of every star around them to power all of their planetary needs. But they have learned to harness their own mental energy. And what if they can do it subconsciously now, where they don't even have to think about it? And that's what can propel their crafts, their ships, whatever they use to travel great distances in the blink of an eye. You got the Alcubierre drive, the theoretical drive, which is used in Star Wars, Star Trek. In Star Wars Episode 2, Attack of the Clones, for people who don't know what I'm talking about, when Obi-Wan arrives at Planet Kamino, the circle that his Jedi Starfighter detaches from, that's an Alcubierre drive. It does not make you go at the speed of light. It bends time and space around the object that is traveling.
Like that. In a society that can do that stuff, if they're the ones that are influencing us, I honestly may think that means if we're some sort of science experiment for them, we're some sort of alien sixth grade science project. We are the potato farm equivalent.
I think
ant farm for some sixth grade extraterrestrial project, being like, hey guys, look, what did I do? I did the easy way out. I made a civilization on a planet.
Our planet is a reality show being broadcast in a classroom on multiple motherships, huge vessels, where there's a teacher talking to younglings, children, whatever they are, little kids, and they're basically telling these kids, hey, so this is Earth. This is one of our experimental properties. This is, we created what's called human beings here, Homo sapiens. They call us something else. Of course they would. We're just using English. We're using words we made up that they probably laugh at. But they're telling these kids, you can't go there yet. It's unsafe. They kill each other if they look different from each other now.
Look at those nerds. They're making an internet show. Those two guys sitting.
Exactly. They're talking about us right now, and they're so close, but they're so far away to what reality is.
They're so cute. Look at them.
Yeah. They're trying to piece it together, and they're never going to do it in their lifetime.
Look at them trying so hard.
But yeah, they're basically telling their kids to stay away from here. We're like the Alabama of the universe.
With all of the trash around of our planet to prove it.
Dude!
Yes,
Our orbital space of our planet looks like somebody's front yard in the most rundown trailer park you've ever seen. Like, there's just junk that we've put up there. But yeah, no, I think that it's very feasible that we are a genetics experiment, and one of two things has happened. One, they intervene periodically to assist us, to help further and progress us, and maybe now we've become too dangerous for them to intervene because it will cause mass chaos and panic. And which, think about this.
I think if that was true, that they were intervening every now and then to keep us from being able to advance to a certain point, which I think...
No. They're trying to help us. But
I have a hard time believing that, because again, I think we're projecting this concept of empathy or...
Well, why would you create something?
Like I said, for medicine, food, or some sort of like...
So you think people have aquariums in their house because they're going to eat those fish?
Or sport or recreation for whatever you do.
Recreation.
Yeah, for recreation.
But you care about those fish. You feed them. You make sure that they have a nice aquarium to live in. If you have a dog, you take care of it. You help it along.
And that's the thing that I don't like when I watch about other people talk about Ancient Astronaut Theory, is this is the part that they don't talk about. They always give this huge, profound influence and reason about extraterrestrial life influencing humanity, when if that's really the case, I don't think that it's as profound. It's probably a lot darker than what people are properly giving it credit to. Like, even at its best, where we're just recreational, we're just some sort of giant ant farm. That's kind of a depressing thought.
Why? Why is that depressing?
Oh, I think
You're thinking of it from a very egocentric place, where we on this one planet out of 9 in our solar system that resides in our Milky Way galaxy, that is a huge spiral galaxy. From our little ball of dirt here, we have discovered over 100 billion different galaxies, of which we reside in the 2 or 3% of the smallest known galaxies that we have discovered from our ball of dirt, and everybody thinks they matter. None of us matter. You don't matter. You don't matter. I don't matter.
Right,
we don't matter.
I'm going to say it now. You do matter because me, Marcus, I love our fans more than those names. I do. We appreciate our fans more than any of us.
Look, I'm not talking about that. Of course you appreciate anybody that watches your show, interacts with. No. The grand scheme. Stop it. Grand scheme of things, of being, this planet is insignificant. Completely insignificant. Our planet's only been here 4 billion years old. The universe is 14 billion years old.
I think an extraterrestrial, but in all seriousness, I think an extraterrestrial civilization that got to the point where they're traveling around the system. I think they're probably beyond. They're probably, again, I have a hard time thinking. Again,
why do you think they put us so far out from the center of the universe? It's so that it's going to take us a good freaking long time to get anywhere. We can't. The only thing that we can mess up is things right here, and that's where I gave point 1 of they intervene periodically, blah blah blah, or point 2 is they created us, they guided us for a little bit, and then they went, "Oh God, we have made a terrible mistake. Let's go." And now,
we're the alligator.
Earth is persona non grata. Nobody comes here anymore, and they basically are waiting for us to either there's going to be an asteroid that wipes us out, or we're going to kill each other off. We're just going to wipe ourselves out, and they're going to come back and start over.
We're the alligator in the sewer of New York. It's like we were just flushed. We got too big, or whatever we were. This one flush. This is just what happens.
Floods,
and that's how the internet was born. Because we got to that
floods, meteors, ice ages, melting of ice ages. Sea level rises 400 feet. Civilizations get wiped out, lost, blah, blah, blah.
Because I get that. I think there'd have to be some sort of change, because if you believe that concept of that they're keeping us from getting to a certain point, or they're keeping us from getting to a certain point, something had to have happened, and that's why we've gotten to this modern age of now.
No.
Or if they were guiding us, why did we even get that? Why did we keep having this? Why didn't they intervene?
Hold on. So how do we treat wildlife preserves? You don't intervene when you see the lion take down the gazelle. That's nature. It's actually it's a criminal offense when sea turtles lay their eggs and the eggs hatch. People have tried to go help the baby sea turtles. All of them make it to the ocean. Now they have Coast Guard there. When hatch time comes, and they have other agencies there that keep people from assisting the sea turtles, and that is because it throws off the biological ecosystem balance of the ocean if all of those baby turtles make it. First of all, you're depriving the seagulls that know when the hatch time is, so they come get food. 2, you have other predators like crabs, like sand crabs and stuff, that get baby turtles. There is only a certain percentage that is supposed to make it into the ocean, and some of those get eaten by other sea creatures and sea life, and that's just it. You don't intervene in nature. If you do, you start to throw. That's like when they put the what was it, Yellowstone? Mm-hmm. Now they have the wolves of Yellowstone.
Oh, to introduce them and stuff.
They had to. Because the deer, they made it illegal to hunt the deer or elk that were there, and they started destroying the ecosystem. And then they had to introduce the wolves. Well, then the wolves balanced it out. Well, then you had beavers returning, building dams. You had the rabbits. You had everything else, and the fauna started to come back too.
Here's something else I'm going to bring up too, because this is a good point we're talking about. We're talking about why don't aliens intervene? Why don't they do this? Do they do that? Do they do this? When people talk about ancient astronaut theory, the stuff that I've seen always makes it sound like there's always this one consensus plan from one type of like extraterrestrial activity, when we know through most stories of the paranormal that there's theoretically vast majorities of different types of extraterrestrials.
Well, that's like we used to think.
Nordics, Greys, reptilians.
We used to think we only existed in 3 dimensions. And then we discovered 11. And now we're up to 37 in a row. Anybody that gets that, I love you. 37 in a row. Do you get it?
I get it.
Okay, good.
I'm also known to the Angry Orchard Rose.
Yeah.
Nice. So that's the thing. There's always.
But now that's where we're into multiverse theory now, where they think that it's possible that there are infinite amount, like there's an infinite amount of dimensions, because we have discovered now that we function on a vibrational frequency. Everything, like everything that we can interact with functions on this specific frequency. And that's where the theory about ghosts or interstellar travelers, interdimensional beings comes into play.
Where everything in the paranormal,
it's a slip.
Yeah,
it's a slip in frequency, and they can now interact here, if even only for a brief moment.
So,
like right now, there could be a train driving through us, but we're at 143 hertz. The train's at 144 hertz.
So
we don't interact.
At a very basic point, is it more likely that we have one particular extraterrestrial influence directing humanity, or multiple ones that's doing it? Because I think
that it would be more plausible that there are countless species who, some are working together, some are against each other, they're duking it out. Some want to control us, some want to consume us, some want to protect us, some want to guide us. But there's, who's to say that there's not some kind of intergalactic federation of beings that govern stupid planets like ours. Like we are, and when I say stupid planets, I don't mean like we're all stupid. I mean like stupid planets. We're not a type 1 civilization on the Kardashev scale. We can't even harness the power of our sun. Like we still use coal and fossil fuel and nuclear radioactive energy.
Hey, first off, I love radioactive nuclear energy because it causes so much in the paranormal. I don't want the effects of it, but I'm just saying it is.
Have you ever watched any of the Chernobyl?
No, I'm not saying that it's a great thing in and of itself. I'm just saying that it is influenced a lot in the paranormal for people that watch our channel and know that.
Have you seen what's happened with Fukushima?
Yes, I have seen what's happened with Fukushima. Did you know there was a Mothman sighting in Fukushima at the time?
I imagine people saw a whole lot of stuff.
I'm sure they did. I'm sure they did.
That's like
it's one of my favorite things to talk about in the paranormal when it comes
when they first started testing nuclear devices. Have you ever seen that video of that light that shows up out of nowhere when they fired a nuclear test rocket, and this light zaps the nuclear test rocket, blows it up in the sky, and doesn't allow it to impact?
Yep. It's pretty weird stuff.
Battle of Los Angeles.
Yep.
That's a real thing. Look it up. The Battle of Los Angeles. I'm not making this up. 1940.
Not the movie.
No. 1940 something. All these huge skylights start sweeping over the skies of Los Angeles, and all of the military personnel started firing huge guns into the sky. There was a huge firefight. No one to this day still knows what happened.
Yeah.
No clue.
But that's why I bring up this idea with Ancient Astronaut Theory. When you watch, if you watch the stuff on the History Channel, if you watch the stuff on other people, that's my biggest beef with it.
Well, we're still trying to fill gaps.
I know, but that's my biggest beef with it, is this idea that it's one particular force that's doing it. When I think you'd almost have to realize that there's probably multiple different influences if Ancient Astronaut Theory is true.
We can look at religion. We can look at one particular religion to codify this a little bit better. In the Torah, which is the Jewish Bible, okay, or the Old Testament.
I'm not digging that. I'm not digging the Angry Orchard Rose.
It's all right.
It's all right.
So in the Torah, when there are 2 trees in the Garden of Eden. There's not one tree. There's the tree of the knowledge of good and evil and the tree of life. Mm-hmm. And God in the Torah said, if they eat from both of these trees, they will become like us. Not me, not I. Us. Well,
yeah, a lot of
pardon the shit out of me, but who's us?
Yeah,
Jehovah.
When you look at a lot of
your brothers and sisters that don't want to get mentioned in the book now.
When you look at a lot of the language of that, they're like within like Judeo-Christian stuff, there implies that there's reference to other deities that he doesn't want.
You mean like the fact that Lucifer was most likely his brother, and not a creation, not an angel, not anything of that nature. They were siblings, and that's why Jehovah couldn't just flash him out of existence and instead banished him from heaven, but also took a third of the homie's followers with him.
Well, if you look at a lot of like religious texts, there's this concept of like within the Jewish Christian concept, like the Nephilim, or the Gnostic stuff, like
and seraphim
and all that. Yep. Like they're these people that are breeding with humanity.
Enlil, Enki,
yeah,
and the Anunnaki.
Like, if you look at Islam, the concept of jinn breeding with
the jinn that were born of darkness and fire.
Yeah,
in the void of the universe before matter even existed.
Mm-hmm. Look at a lot of people take that as an example of that. That's extraterrestrial life that's staying on humanity to guide it. And in a way it does, because a lot of their children often influence a lot of civilizations.
What if the universe as we know it exists in the left testicle of some gigantic creature that has no idea we're here? Kind of like an ant. An ant doesn't know anything about your existence.
And I'm going to say this is the best part of that left testicle. This particular YouTube channel, Blood Candle Society, is with the Bulldog.
We're the one that make him scratch.
Yeah, with the Bulldog Unchained Podcast right next to that.
Yeah,
that's causing that slight irritation.
Yeah,
to make it
that vibrational irritation.
Yeah, that's what that is. And what? Okay. So
see, and those are the kind of thoughts that can live. Like those kind of thoughts have actually driven people mad.
Yeah.
Like insane, because when you start thinking about, like at the end of Men in Black, it shows our entire universe shrunk down into something the size of a marble, and there are 2 alien kids on another planet shooting marbles with our entire universe.
Or the second one, we're just in a locker at like some sort of like bus station.
We reside in the collar of some giant cat.
Like there's just this huge spectrum when you look in like an Ancient Astronaut Theory as to how much like it influences it, how much like positively or negatively when you really think about it. Like you just go back and forth on it. Like, yeah. So wrapping this episode up. So final thoughts on Ancient Astronaut Theory. What's your take from it?
I think it's like a lot of things in any kind of academia or science. I think it has merit. I think that any scientist, archaeologist, anybody that is of an academic nature that dismisses it or tries to refute it completely, you're not doing anyone any favors. Because look at how much of just our history alone people tried to refute for years, and then it was found, oh, they were right. Oh, man. Okay, well, oh boy. Well, now we have to rewrite textbooks.
We have to rewrite science.
Oh, God. Yeah, exactly. And that's it should be looked at, like ancient astronaut theory should be looked at the same way that modern medicine or biology or technology is looked at. You know, people look at some of the things that we have today as far as invention-wise, and they're like, wow, could you have ever imagined that this would have ever existed? Well, somebody did. And think about this. Think about the things. There's some kid right now in Indonesia who is 7 years old and has his brain fixated on something right now that we can't comprehend. There is some 6 or 7 year old kid that is one of those star children that is so super intelligent, his parents just can't even have a conversation with him. He tolerates them because they provide basic human needs that he can't provide for himself at this point in time. But anytime he talks to his own parents, they just stare at him like a potato, and they don't understand what he's talking about. But this kid is going to come along and change the world. Elon Musk, man. Elon Musk figured out how to do something in 3 years that NASA still can't do after 60. How to land a takeoff booster rocket back on a launch pad and reuse it. Elon Musk did that. One dude. A dude. Figured out how. He also figured out, after going to Russia to potentially buy a surplus of their rockets for his SpaceX program, and they wanted to charge him like $12 million a rocket. And he was like, that's insane. And they literally, I'm not making this up either, literally laughed at him and said, what's wrong, too expensive, little boy? And he got pissed, closed his portfolio, walked out, and on the flight home, figured out how to build his own rockets for $2 million each. And then he figured out how to land those rockets back on a launch pad. So now there's a 7-year-old kid somewhere that's going to come along here in the next 15 to 20 years. This kid's going to change the world as we know it. And there are multiples of this kid. And some of these kids are going to get the opportunity. Some of these kids are just going to be labeled as crazy, dismissed, blah, blah, blah. And then 100 years from now, after those kids are dead, there's going to be somebody who was younger than them who is still alive. And then it's shown that every crazy thing that this kid said that he was dismissed for and never given a chance to prove or show or move forward with, they're going to show that it can be done. It can happen. And, oh, damn, we were wrong again. Because we as human beings have very tiny brains, and we compartmentalize everything. And kind of like religion, we compartmentalize things to what we are able to understand.
My take on Ancient Astronaut Theory is that you have to look at it from the context that there's probably not one particular extraterrestrial influence that's taken on humanity. You can't.
The law of statistics.
Yeah. You can't look at it from that context. There's probably multiple different extraterrestrial influencers, if it's true.
Millions.
That's impacting it. The second part of it too is this concept that we always dismiss how further along in technology ancient civilizations actually were. We always have this concept that they were these dumb dudes that were chewing on rocks, probably back in the
rocks
day,
together,
trying to figure stuff out. When in actuality, they were probably way further along, probably even in some stuff than we are today. With some stuff. And they had concepts of things like ancient mathematics and advanced mathematics, engineering, and these kinds of concepts. When you look at it, and when you put that all together, that's what we're always trying to do is trying to figure out our history of what was us. If you can't answer that, was there something else?
Well, and the fact that we can't answer what we were and who we were hinders where we're going. Mm-hmm. Imagine if we could somehow develop that hive mind on this planet and develop that hive mind with our planet, and the planet could give us all of the information about all of our peoples that have existed since we came about. Mm-hmm. A worldwide network of endless information at a thought. At a thought. First of all, our entire way of life goes away. Money is meaningless. War is over. You have 7 billion people now who function together as one entity in the cosmos. And that's what it takes to become that kind of civilization that can perform interstellar travel.
Then you got to wonder at the end of the day, if ancient aliens or if extraterrestrial life has been guiding us along, the last question would be, what would they think about us? I'm going to leave that thought for you guys in the comments below. But don't forget, guys, keep believing, because we'll keep listening.